Hello, this is Chas with Heirloom Leaves and Seeds, and today I wanted to talk about the last wedding that I did the flowers for. Now, this wedding was in February, so it was early in the year, and as you guys know, I'm a seasonal flower farmer, and so there was nothing in the garden at this point, so we had to order all the flowers in, but they were so beautiful and fun to work with. So let's get started and talk about the flowers that I used. First, let me show you her inspirational photo. And here is this beautiful bouquet, and the bouquet has lots of foliage, lots of greenery, and then it just has a few flowers in there. And so first on the list would have been peonies, but peonies are very seasonal and they are usually in the time frame of May and June. So I knew that there was probably not going to be any way we could get peonies, but when we ordered them in, there was a good suggestion for a garden rose. And garden roses have more of a bowl-like flower form, and I thought it was a great replacement for a peony. So that was the first flower, and that would have been the focal flower. And then second is anemone. In the bouquet is the beautiful white anemone with a black center. And I have grown these before and they are absolutely beautiful. So I knew that would be a fun element to add to the bouquet. And then third is a ranunculus. Now the ranunculus were not in the picture, but I thought they would be a nice addition to the bouquets just because they're a very round flower. They were in that white color palette, and I thought they might be nice to sprinkle in and use in the bridesmaids bouquets. And fourth on the list is chocolate lace flower. Now, I have grown this every year that I've grown flowers, and it is one of my favorites. I love how light and airy they are and all the different colors they come in. And so I was really happy to see this one. Now, I actually think that it might have been a me green mist flower in the picture, but they did not have those. So I thought that chocolate lace flower would be a good substitute. And then 5 and 6 is the eucalyptus. And we got two different types, and these are dried from the wedding. But this is a nice seeded eucalyptus, and I've never worked with it before. And it was fun to work with. I was a little shocked at how heavy they were, and the little seeds on it was so heavy that it really made them droop. Very beautiful, loved them. And then here is a willow eucalyptus, and this is just one sprig. The branches actually was like really big, and so we got plenty of this, and I loved using it. And then next is Eryngium, and I love the blue flower. I love this color palette. Those were awesome. And then next was something I've never worked with, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I think it's Brunia. And it is I think a seed pod or seed head that was dried. And that was very beautiful. It gave like a unique look to the bouquet. So that was really fun to work with. And then I did get to incorporate just a little bit of some flowers that I have grown here, and that was strawflower, celosia, and gomphrena. Now they were all dried from last year, and I used those on the corsages. And then my sister foraged for some greenery. I believe it was some arbovita and maybe some cypress, and we used plenty of that in the arrangements as well. Her wedding was pretty much just the basics. She didn't want any extravagant centerpieces or nothing going down the aisle, nothing like that. So the things that I made for her wedding was corsages, boutonnieres, plenty of bouquets, and then one arrangement for the dessert table. And so this was a very stress-free wedding. I wasn't nervous. It all went really smooth and very well. So let's get started on the corsages. Now for the corsages, I did a simple brass cuff, and then I used the dried flowers that I had saved from last year. Now I did use some of the Eryngium, and I would pluck off, if you look here, I plucked off some of these, I don't know if they're sepals or petals, I don't know the correct thing that they are called, the name, but just to cut down on some of the size, I pulled these little pieces off and used half of them. And that would be so they could lay flat and not take up too much room. So I used some of those. I used some of those little seed heads, and then I used some eucalyptus and some of the greenery. So those were fun to make, and I made them the day before I did the bouquets because these are a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more hardy, and they were fine making them the day before. And then for the boutonnieres, I had free reign and was able to make whatever I wanted. She was leaving that up to me. And so several years ago, I had actually seen Eryngium on Pinterest as a bouquet or as a boutonniere, and I thought it was very beautiful. And so we just took, well, you're not going to be able to see it with this dark sweater. And I used one Eryngium, and then I used a little baby's breath and a little eucalyptus, and then some greenery. Very simple, easy to make, and I think they turned out really well, and I had so much fun making these. I like to make boutonnieres, they're just fun. So that's what I used for the boutonnieres. And for the bouquets, I used a little bit of everything. And for the bouquets, I will usually do a couple of the bridesmaids bouquets first. And while I'm going through the flowers, I will hand select some of the best and most beautiful flowers and save those for the bride's bouquet because I want hers to be the most beautiful, the most glorious and perfect. So after I do a few of the bridesmaids bouquets, then I will do the bride's bouquet. And then after the bride's bouquet, I'll just finish up on the bridesmaids or a toss away bouquet. So that's fun. Making the bouquets is also one of my favorite things to do. And I thought it all went really good and it was so much fun. And then last on the list of the things that I made was just one simple arrangement for the dessert table. Now, her dessert table was really fun. She had different cakes. She didn't have a traditional one wedding cake. She had almost just a dessert table. She had donut stacks, she had different size cakes, and then she even had ice cream with hot fudge sundae. So it was really fun. And I think she had a few more things, but yeah, I just did that one arrangement on the side of the dessert table. Now, as a seasonal flower farmer, I will tell you a few things that I wasn't expecting when I ordered her flowers. And it's just something I didn't think about. And one is, all right, let me go in order. I made a list. So, number one was the size of the flowers. Now, as a seasonal flower farmer, I always have an inventory of what I have growing outside in my head. I know the size, I know when they're going to be blooming, I know exactly what to expect. But when you order them in, I didn't know what the size was going to be. And two things kind of took me off guard. Now, the garden roses, I wanted to be big, full focal flowers, and they weren't. They were roughly the same size of the anemone and the ranunculus. Now, thank goodness, I think they were just a little bit bigger, so they were the focal flower. But I just wanted them to be really nice and full and to take up the bulk of the arrangement and really draw your eye. And they were still absolutely gorgeous, but they just weren't quite the size I was expecting. So I think that actually took a few more flowers to make up that because it's almost like I had to have 2 or 3 of the garden roses to take up the size of what one nice sized peony would have been. So that was one of the things I just wasn't expecting. And two was the orangium. Now, I've grown orangium in my garden before, and their seed, like the flower, was usually the size or even smaller. And when they came in, I was totally taken aback because one branch was like, I mean, they were really big. And some, like, I had to go through and pick the smallest ones to use for the boutonnieres and the corsages. And it was hard because most of them were twice this size. And I'll show you this picture I sent my sister as a joke. I showed one of them on the corsage and it was way too big. There was just no way it was going to look right if I used the average size. And so I had to pivot and kind of think of another way to go about it. And so I tried just using the smallest ones in the boutonnieres and the corsages. And it turned out fine, but I was a little horrified at, I'm like, this is not going to work. What am I going to do? But it did. I just had to go through and find the smallest of the smallest ones I could find. But it turned out, but that's just something to think about is when you order them in, you don't know what you're going to get. So, number two was the quality of the flowers. Now, this had nothing to do from where I ordered them or anything like that because most of the flowers that you order in, they're going to be from another country. And so they're getting picked, they're getting shipped, they're traveling, and then they arrive where you pick them up, and then you go get them, and then you bring them home. So these flowers are jumping all over the place versus me just going outside and picking them. So there's going to be the foliage is going to be rough and battered, and some of the petals are going to be crinkled. It's just the way it is. And I did have some anemone that, like, as soon as I got them out, they were brown or turning brown. And so I I was down a few anemones because they were not in good shape. And so that was one thing I didn't think about either. Some of the rose petals I had to like say this was a rose petal, I had to pluck off the outer ones on some because they were creased or they were just a little brown on the rim. So that's something I wasn't thinking about is the fact that they may not be in good shape or perfect shape. If I see something outside that's not in the best shape, I just leave it or I cut it and compost it. So that's something else that I wasn't thinking about. And then number three was getting the quality right. It's really hard to be making 6 bouquets, 13 boutonnieres, and all this stuff, and to know how many bundles you're going to need. Because usually they'll come in packs of 10 or 12. And so you can figure it up like, oh, I may need 5 of this focal flower for this bouquet. And you just kind of add it up the best you can think and throw in some extras. But sometimes even that is not right. And this was about all I had left over. And no joke, I had this and just a few more willow sprigs over at the shop. And I cut it a little close, but it turned out fine. But it's hard to get that right because if you're short, you can't really get any more of a specific, especially if it's a specialty flower. You might as well forget it. Like if I wanted more of that garden rose, there's no way. You don't have the time, and even the place you get it from, they probably don't have any more of that because you're ordering it in. So you got to use what you have. As a seasonal flower farmer, I'd just go pick some more. You just can't do that when you're ordering specialty flowers. And then last on the list was the light airiness of all the ingredients. I didn't think of this when I saw her inspirational picture, but many of the flowers are very light and airy. So, like, if you can see right through something pretty much, it's very light and airy. So, both of the willows, light and airy, the eryngium, very light and airy. So, I mean, you can see right through these. So, it was hard to make the bouquets look like they had fullness, substance, you know what I'm saying? Even the chocolate lace flower was very light, very airy, very delicate. And then the anemone, ranunculus, and garden roses had to make up the bulk and the greenery. And I kind of had a hard time because it seemed like I was adding so many stems to give that fullness to a bouquet. And that was something I didn't think about. And the Bernia, that was a little bit of a challenge to work with because the stems were very tough and hard. If you were just using regular scissors or snips, there was no way you could cut through that. So that was another little bit of a shock because it's almost like I had to use the stem length that it was. And so those are just a few things to think about if you ever have to order flowers in, because it was a little bit of a shock to me. And one last thing that I didn't put on here was as I'm out in the field, I just strip them as I go. I take off all the lower leaves. They're not like that when they come in. I had to spend a good 45 minutes to an hour just getting them out of the packages, stripping off the lower leaves and the ones that was bruised and crushed. So those are just a few things that kind of took me by surprise and I wasn't expecting. It was nothing to do with the supplier or, it's just the way it is when you have to order flowers in. And I had a thought. I was like, just be thankful that you can even get a garden rose in February because it's February. Very thankful that we could even get this selection in February. But I thought it would be fun just to talk about some of the things I was a little shocked about. The wedding went very smooth. It was beautiful, and I had so much fun playing around with all of these ingredients. And it was fun seeing the inspiration that my niece picked out. Very fun. So I hope you guys found this video fun and interesting. And a little insight on my next video is going to be about my daughter is getting married, and we have had so much fun. We've started doing a little wedding shopping, and I will do a video about this. I thought it would be fun. I've done the flowers for several weddings now, and I've had two nieces get married recently. My own daughter was married 2 years ago, and now my other one, my last daughter, is getting married in the fall. So I thought it would be fun to do two videos. I thought one would be fun to do about how I plan to grow flowers and how I'm figuring it all up to grow for my daughter's wedding. And I mean, we've got some weddings under our belt, me and my sisters, and we've got some experience. So I thought it would be fun to talk about things to think about when you are planning a wedding. So, not just about flowers, but just in general, and kind of show you how me and my daughter are going along planning a wedding because wedding planning is so much fun. And so, I thought that might be two interesting things to talk about. And I thought maybe even a third one that would be fun would be when you're thinking about your wedding flowers, things to consider. And I think that might be the third video. So The next couple ones are going to be wedding themed because that's the state of mind that I'm in right now. We just had one. We've been doing so much planning with my daughter's wedding. And so I thought this might be helpful for someone who is just starting to plan their wedding because the wedding season is on its way this year. So, if your wedding is in the fall, late summer of this year, or even next year, these videos may be helpful because, like I said, we've got quite a bit of experience doing weddings. I hope you guys found this interesting, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh, and this is a cupcake stand. I guess I should have told you. You're looking at this like, okay, what is this? Now, she had a vision of a cupcake stand. So I don't know what we're going to do because I'll show you in the next video, but my daughter's wedding venue is all black and white. So cupcake tower, and then we need one more tier, and that will have a little wedding cake on the top. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.